Hello, everyone. It is Friday morning. I want to talk about the impending Israel ground invasion into Gaza to eradicate Hamas. The war has been going on for 2 to 3 weeks now. It is now October 27. It started October 7th, so it's actually 20 days to be precise. And so far, Israel has not invaded yet, which is surprising because it was supposedly ready to invade for a while now. And so, what are they waiting for? Not sure. But I want to talk about this invasion. Up until now, I was sort of supportive or perhaps agnostic. I wasn't sure. I did read the opinion article by Thomas Friedman a few days ago, urging Israel very strongly that invasion is not a good idea unless it is coupled with a general Palestinian peace accord. I did not quite get his logic. I don't fully understand why it's a terrible idea unless it is paired with a peace deal, and how that would help. And also, how could you even make peace? I mean, we've tried so many times already and it hasn't worked. So, why would it work this time? And so, whatever. That article is a little weird, in my opinion. But it did get me thinking. And I've read another article in the New York Times recently about how an invasion would look like. And I've developed a fully forged opinion at this point. Of course, I'm not a military strategist, and I know there's a lot of information that I'm missing, of course. I don't know what Israel plans to do exactly. So its strategy and tactics, by the way, in Gaza are obviously secret. Um, but but nevertheless, I have my opinion. So here's what I have come to the conclusion to, and that is that I'm against an invasion. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, I am very much pro-Israel in this conflict. I think Hamas is literally crazy. Like, anyone who supports them on this just either is morally completely bankrupt or they're just ignorant. Like, they just don't know anything, and probably they don't want to learn anything. They just want to blindly support Hamas. So either they're ignorant or they're just really evil people. There's no justification for what Hamas did, and there's also no justification for their general ideology. This is a jihadist ideology that just wants to die. And so any person who is not a jihadist, him or herself, should not be supporting them. Again, it just makes no sense for you to be supporting them. Again, if you don't know that they're driven by jihadi ideology and everything that they're doing is just blind fundamentalist religion, then you're just ignorant. You should not be wading in to the Israeli Gaza conflict if you don't know what's going on here, right? If you don't know what you're dealing with. So, but let me get to the point. Why is an invasion a bad idea? Okay, so first, what is the goal of an invasion? So, Bibi recently said, Bibi is Benjamin Netanyahu, he's the prime minister of Israel. So he recently said in a speech that the goal would be to eradicate Hamas, both militarily and their ability to govern. Okay, I'll get back to these two in a minute. And the other mission is to rescue the hostages. Okay, now these two are, by the way, mutually exclusive. They don't go together really well because we're assuming that if Hamas is really pushed to the wall, they're just gonna kill the hostages. So it's really difficult. Right now, it appears that the reason the hostages are remaining alive is because Israel has not yet invaded. And it appears that the reason they're releasing them is also to delay the invasion. So they're releasing very, very slowly. They released like 4 hostages out of 220, whatever. But the only reason they would have released anyone is to somehow give the impression that by not invading, you're going to get something, right? So it stands to reason then that it's going to be very difficult of rescuing them alive if Israel does invade. But that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the other two, which is the other two goals, which is it's really one goal, which is eradicating Hamas both militarily and government-wise. So the two, of course, go together because if you Why do they go together? Okay, let's understand that part. If you eliminate somehow, you eliminate all the military slash aggression capabilities of Hamas, but you allow them to remain in government, then they're just going to rebuild, right? It's just going to matter of time. They're still being supplied by Iran. The ideology is the same. The people in power are the same. So all that you've accomplished is that you just took away their gun. Okay, big deal. They'll get a new gun, right? So you will have accomplished very little. All you will have done is just delay and put a pause to the carnage. So okay, for the next, let's say, 2-3 years, you won't have as many rockets. So it will not have been worth it if that's your objective, is to simply take away or neutralize their military power. So let's talk about not just removing their military power, but also removing the actual people in power slash organization, the Hamas organization, actually removing them. So the question here becomes, who is going to govern Hamas if not Hamas? I'm sorry, who's going to govern Gaza if not Hamas? And that's a very big question. And I think the Israelis are asking this question themselves, the Israeli strategists. The Americans are asking it. Everyone is really asking this question of what really are we trying to do here? Like, if you come here, then obviously we're going to try to neutralize them militarily, right? We're going to defeat them militarily. But what's the next step? Okay, so all the Hamas fighters, our objective is they're either going to be captured, they're either going to be killed, we're going to eliminate all the military infrastructure. Then what? Who's going to govern Hamas? That's the big problem here. Why is it such a big problem? Let's go through some of the options here of who's going to govern Hamas. One option is that Israel will hand over. I keep saying who's going to govern Hamas. Who's going to govern Gaza? Okay, one option is that Israel is going to hand over Gaza to the Palestinian Authority, whom they handed it to initially. So if you go back to 2005, when Israel first withdrew, they gave it to Fatah because Israel does not have a relationship and does not recognize Hamas, of course. They do recognize Fatah. Fatah is the one that signed the peace treaty, not a peace treaty, but they signed, some agreements with Israel, and Fatah, at least informally, at least acknowledges the existence of Israel and accepts the existence of Israel. So one option is to give it to Fatah. The problem with this option is that Fatah was ousted by the people of Gaza. They had elections and they lost. So they lost democratically, they lost militarily because the Hamas fighters were actually stronger than Fatah. They actually killed a lot of them. And so Fatah is a pushover in Gaza. They don't have it in them. And so if Israel is to take over Gaza and give it to Fatah, so it's not going to work because for one reason, they are just weak. And they are perceived as weak. And so yeah, and they won't be able to govern without Israel supporting them, backing them up, and defending them against Hamas, or actually even doing their work. And that's just completely not workable. If Israel has to somehow collaborate with Fatah to try to, eradicate these tunnels and the military infrastructure and do missions, security missions inside, incursions, raids against Hamas fighters, etc., it's going to be very untenable. And first of all, Palestinians would never even want to do that. But if they don't do it, Hamas will just literally take over again over time, the same way they took over in 2006 or 7. So, and that's even if Fatah even agrees to do so. It could be extremely embarrassing for them to take over after a prolonged Israeli operation that killed so many Gazans. And make no mistake, a lot of innocent civilians, I'll get back to this in a moment, will die in this process as well. And so if Fatah takes over from Israel, they will be perceived as collaborating with the enemy. Because right now, Fatah also considers Israel the enemy. But yeah, so that's not really workable. Okay, what about Egypt? Egypt used to rule Gaza. What if it takes over Gaza again? So here we also have an unpractical solution, because one, Egypt will never agree. to take back Gaza. They don't want Gaza. We know that they don't want it, and for good reason. They're just radicals. They're crazies, and Egypt has no benefit from ruling them because it's not a resource-rich area. It's not like what do you gain if you're Egypt from governing these people? It's just all headache, right? These are difficult, radicalist, jihadist people. Remember, Egypt is more moderate, a lot more moderate than the Hamas slash Iran ideology. So they don't really want to have to face this. Yes, they are Muslim like you, but they are crazy Muslims. So why deal with that, right? Let Israel deal with that. I gain nothing by governing Gaza, is what Egypt is thinking to itself. And so it's extremely difficult. There isn't really anything the West can give Egypt to motivate it to do this. So I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, if Egypt wants to take over, it would come at a great cost, not as high as if Israel were to invade, but if Egypt were to invade and reclaim the territory it had lost. So from the public relations standpoint, it would look a lot better because all they're doing is just regaining ground that they basically ceded to Israel at some point in the past. So they, in other words, their claim on the land is still sort of still valid, especially since they're also Arabic and they're also Muslim, etc. But Hamas is not going to go down without a fight. We know that. And why? There's zero motive. They're not firing rockets on Egypt. They're firing rockets on Israel. So why should I do Israel's job? So yeah, so we're going to eliminate that as a possibility. Let's look at the only other option is a UN type of peacekeeping force. Now that's not going to work either because in order for such a force to be viable, it has to truly be international. In other words, all the major foreign powers have to agree to this. First of all, you can't get a security resolution passed unless the five big ones, the five permanent members of the Security Council, they approve of it. And that's never going to happen. Because if the US and Britain want something, and automatically it is in the interest of Russia and China to oppose. It's automatic at this point of the game. I mean, this is not 40, 50 years ago. At a point, I mean, right after World War II or in the past or whatever, when China was sort of in the middle, sometimes it favored the West, and Russia was still, looking at its own interests rather than seeing the world as the West versus them. Okay, so now Russia will automatically oppose anything that's in the interest of the U.S. Anything that the U.S. is promoting, they will oppose. The same thing is with China. So it's never going to pass a security resolution, a UN Security Council resolution. It's just not going to happen. Also, who is going to constitute the actual force? If it is only Western nations, then you have the same exact problem. The leftists will continue saying it's a colonialist power. The Arabs will continue, the Arab nations will continue to balk and to criticize Israel and the West for it. And of course, the Hamas fighters will continue to fight, and they will continue to have sympathy for fighting those powers, for this UN power that is attempting to occupy their land. So it's just not going to work. The only way it works is if it passes a UN resolution, and the peacekeeping force consists of Arab powers as well. So they would have to be a contingency of, let's say, the Egyptian Egyptian military / peacekeeping force, Saudi Arabia, maybe other Jordan, other friendly countries, at a minimum. Okay, I understand, and of course it's not going to be Iran or any of that, or Lebanon or Syria or Hezbollah. Obviously, the UN wouldn't want that, right? We want people who want peace, right? So it would, but it would have to include those countries. And that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's very impractical and unrealistic to suppose that these countries are willing to send forces to Gaza for the benefit of Israel, right? So even though those countries are nominally either neutral or friendly with Israel, they're just not going to do it. they're not going to die on the battlefield in order to help Israel. Again, if you're having a peacekeeping force in Gaza, people are going to die. Either you're going to die or Hamas people are going to die, right? What do you gain out of it? Nothing. So again, this is also not workable. Bottom line is, hold on a second. Before I go to the bottom line, what if Israel stays there indefinitely? Now that actually might work, but does Israel really want to stay there indefinitely? I mean, obviously the outcry from the Arab world will be through the roof. Okay, they're just reoccupying them, and the Arab world will never like that, including the supposedly friendly countries. So Israel will be criticized from the entire Arab world, plus all the leftists in the Western civilization who are allying themselves with the fundamentalists of Iran and Hamas. And so, and of course, a lot of people are going to die on both sides, on both Israel and civilians. I'll get back to this in a moment. But we're talking here about non-combatants in Gaza. They will die in an occupation such as this. And it's too high of a price to pay, both militarily on both sides and in terms of public relations. It's just not workable. I don't think that this is the best solution. I know there's a lot of people in Israel who they want revenge. They want to go in there. They want to do it. But after you eradicate the infrastructure, who's going to govern? If the answer is, I'm going to govern, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They cannot govern the place. And they cannot militarily occupy the place indefinitely either. So what's left? So here's my opinion of what's left. Finally, I'm going to get to the point. I've come up with an idea. And the idea is as follows, and I think this is workable. And the idea is that Israel is going to say as follows. They're going to say, okay, here's the thing. We cannot come in here and govern. It's just not practical. This is a very dense urban environment. We're not coming in here. We're not doing a ground invasion, and we're not overthrowing. We're not going to be the ones coming here to fight these Hamas crazies and overthrow the regime and do this. Rather, what we're going to do is we are going to continue doing what we've been doing until now, which is bombing any area that we suspect that we have evidence that this is a Hamas, that rockets are being launched from there or there's any military activity going on there. We'll continue doing that. In fact, we're going to intensify and accelerate this program, and we're going to start doing this without warning. How about this? Now, up until now, what Israel has been doing is it has been bombing Hamas infrastructure, but these bombings are only eradicating the infrastructure, not the people. Why? Because Israel gives warning. So if you're bombing from the air and you give warning, then it's very, very difficult to kill someone, especially in mass numbers, if you are giving warning in advance, right? Because if you're telling the people in this building that, hey, we're going to hit this building, then obviously the Hamas fighters are going to evacuate too, right? So you've destroyed the building, but you didn't get the fighters, okay? Now, if Israel adopted a strategy slightly different here, we're not giving warning anymore. We're giving one warning, an advance warning, a permanent declaration to the people of Gaza from now on. If you stay here, and they're talking to Gaza people here, if you stay on the strip and you are living in a building that Hamas fighters are operating from that building, your life is at risk. In fact, you will die. Chances are favorable that you will die because we are going to strike without warning, every single building that we see rocket coming from, every single tunnel that we detect from the air, or we have intelligence that there's a tunnel, we're just going to bomb it. If you're in the area, you're going to die. Every tunnel. Don't live around the tunnel. Don't live around any Hamas fighters. In fact, Israel should declare that anyone who stays is automatically friendly to the regime. Because if you're not, you need to either overthrow the regime or leave. I know that such a declaration sounds funny and untenable, but I'll get to that in a moment. But if you are basically staying on the strip and you're not overthrowing the regime, then I'm sorry. There's nothing else that I can do. I have to defend myself. And I have to do it in a manner that not just destroys the infrastructure, but also destroys the people who are fighting. And so if I cannot kill them without killing others, that's what's going to happen. I'm sorry. There's no other way to do it. So, Israel is talking here to the people of Hamas, to the people of Gaza. So if you want to survive, if you want to live, you either have to overthrow the regime or you have to leave the strip. What's going to happen if this happens? I think this is going to be effective. I do think so. I think at some point, either of two things will happen. Either the people are just going to say to themselves, enough. We can't have Hamas rule. We're all dying here. We can't have Hamas rule us. We want peace. We're going to stop throwing rockets at Israel. We're going to start electing a government that doesn't do that. Either Hamas itself will stop doing that, or they'll just throw out Hamas and invite Fatah to come back in. Okay? Again, I don't think right now that there is support of people on the ground for a transition of power. I just don't think it's there. Which goes back to what I said, the Gazan civilians. I don't think there really are a whole bunch of civilians there, because in the traditional sense, because I think the people are actively cheering and supporting Hamas. I have no reason to believe that there's any other than that there's any males, adult males in Hamas, who are against Hamas. I'm sorry, in Gaza, who are against Hamas. I don't know. If there are, they must be really, really small in number. I just don't, I think that the whole place is infested right now. The whole place is eaten up by hatred towards Israel, and they're willing to die in the process. That's what I sense. But if they actually start dying, then things might change. It's easy to pledge yourself to a cause when it's only theoretical. But when you actually start dying, they might change their mind. So I'm not sure. I don't know. If they do die, that's fine. Israel has declared officially a policy that we're going to be starting to strike without warning. Again, if you're staying in Gaza and you're not overthrowing the regime, then we have no choice but to kill you, because Hamas is, we already know this, Hamas is fighting from civilian areas. And so the only way for us to strike Hamas back is by killing the civilians that are around you. So we're not targeting you. We feel very saddened. Of course, it's a lie, because we're not feeling sad because they are supporting Hamas too. But they can say in the open, in the public declaration, they can say, okay, I'm sorry that I have to do this, but I have to do it to defend myself. No warning. Strike without warning from now on. I just don't see any other way to do this. So again, two things could happen. Either this will motivate the people to overthrow Hamas and form a peaceful government, or a lot of people are going to start leaving. And if a lot of the peaceful people leave, now of course you're going to ask me, well, where are they going to go? Where are they going to go? Well, if it truly becomes a crisis that literally innocent people are dying, then other Arabic countries will be strongly motivated and strongly pressured to open up their doors and to allow them in. And by the way, it wouldn't be such a bad idea for them to do so, because the only reason that friendly Arab countries are not accepting Gazan refugees right now is because they don't want the upheaval that comes with accepting such radicals. But if the people who are leaving are not, if they can be vetted to be anti-Hamas, then it's not such a big deal. Okay? Remember, the Gaza people, they used to be ruled by Egypt. So if you're accepting somebody from Gaza who is, he wants to live an Egyptian way of life, they're not pro-Iran, they're not pro-Hamas, they're not pro-throwing rockets at Israel, and you want to, mingle and assimilate into Egyptian society, then, what's the big deal? Now, again, Egypt will be pressured to do so because people are dying, People who do not support Hamas and don't want to be there have no other place to go, and therefore they're dying. So that's one option. Another option, by the way, is for Israel itself to accept them. That's also an option. Israel could vet. In theory, it could launch a process where people who are, people who are favorable, are allowed to live in a certain area within Israel or even within Gaza. They can basically say anyone who is. I'm coming up with other ideas here. Okay, whatever. The point being here is that this is this could work. Okay, so Egypt could be pressured, Jordan could be pressured, Saudi Arabia, all the countries that are friendly to Israel, they could be pressured to open doors and allow a certain number, a certain quota of anti-Hamas residents to enter the country. And so over time, if Hamas is not overthrown, then you will have a 100% hostile country on your border. And I say 100%, I'm meaning there's no innocence here. Okay, everyone is either Hamas fighters, they're family of fighters, they support Hamas. Just stop calling them civilians. They're not civilians. Okay, they're not civilians when when the fighters are operating from their bedrooms, from their kitchens, from their mosques, from their all of that. The only way that I could have sympathy is if these people do not want to fight. Right? They're like literally held there against their will. And even then, Israel is justified in retaliating, as I have just explained. Okay, Israel is allowed to defend itself, and if it kills a hostage in the process, that's on the enemy's shoulders. That's on the enemies. That's on their conscience, not on Israel's. All right, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.